So let's talk Rubber Soul. The Beatles are basically an institution at this point. The Beatles as a countercultural phenomenon is a vestige of the past, frankly. This isn't to say that I don't think their music is brilliant and doesn't deserve any of the acclaim, although it is what it is, right? You could dispute how countercultural they were if you want. I'm a devotee of Frank Zappa, and at one time he believed that they were only in it for the money, and I'm glad he did because it led to an absolutely extraordinary LP as a result in '68, but I digress. What we have with Rubber Soul, in my opinion, is the first Beatles LP that was really, really brilliant and really deserves the kind of ocean of 5 stars you see when you pull up the album's critical reception tab on Wikipedia. See, prior to 1965, well, I wasn't alive before 1996, what I'm describing specifically is when going on the internet to listen to albums prior to 1965, one tends to find more satisfaction from, if one is looking for LPs, well, LPs, you know what I mean, streaming of track lists of LPs. You tend to gravitate toward these kind of jazz odysseys by Miles Davis, Ornette Coleman, John Coltrane, Dave Brubeck, or Bill Evans, Duke Ellington, whoever you want to name, jazz artists. I tend to think of the histories I read at one time claimed that the LP really came into its own with jazz, although there's a counter narrative which claims it was more rock/pop, and Rubber Soul is where it really consolidates itself. You also hear, and this is an extraordinary album, Ray Charles' Modern Sounds in Country and Western Music from 1962, Volume 1. Phenomenal. An album where the artist in question is specifically attempting to go through a lot of the prevalent styles in his contemporary recording music world and, take a stab at them. Rubber Soul is similar in intent. You get kind of a quasi-soul flavor on side A, and the country music stylings on side B, I might say. John Lennon, he's even got a cowboy-esque top on the album cover. I don't tend to think of this as my favourite Beatles album, although I must say, if I were ranking them, I think it would totally come in fourth for me, which is very high praise, all the same. Maybe we'll just go through the track list so we don't waffle on as much as we did in the Queen News of the World. Okay, so, this opening track, Drive My Car, Motown light, and honestly, one of the few weaker cuts. Makes me wince a bit. Beep, 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 yeah. No? Can you have a so-so opening track on an uber classic album? Well, the remainder of Rubber Soul will prove that. Yes, you can, but still, I Drive My Car, it's fine. Whatever. Probably the weakest cut on the album, though, let's be honest. And while we're here, let's talk about... There are merits in Drive My Car, however. Merits which can be found on every track of this album. And why is that? Well, because the production on this album is godly. The rustic sounds, the last pre-psych Beatles album, the peak of old school pre-psych hi-fi and recorded music, it might be. Rubber Soul is phenomenal. The production is... It's as a god level, George Martin the genius, the most talented Beatle, sorry for my sacrilege. I mean, don't even get me wrong, John Lennon, very great, Paul McCartney, very great. If I had to choose one of the two, it's definitely John Lennon, but I like Paul McCartney a lot too. I like George Harrison. As far as the solo careers go, after Plastic Ono Band, I don't care for John Lennon's solo albums. After Ram, I don't care much for Paul McCartney or Wings, though McCartney too was very good. George Harrison, I like those two 60s albums, and I really don't care for the All Things Must Pass record. Although I really like the 79 album, and the Blow Away single is gorgeous. Ringo, I like Ringo, he's fine. His songs can be so-so sometimes. Although him as a drummer, not bad. Some of the interesting work, he's a good studio drummer, so he was able to, not a virtuoso, but he was able to employ his talent, his precision for tracks like She Said, and Strawberry Fields Forever to a very interesting effect, I feel. And then there's also his solo career, which is, well, not worth talking about really. The tracks I've heard are not impressive, unfortunately. And then there is Norwegian Wood. A top-tier song. It is just everything. It washes away the bad taste one might have, well, I kind of do with Drive My Car, and it is wholly indicative of this album's reputation and why it deserves at least 3/4 of it. One of the very best Beatles songs, in my opinion. Then You Won't See Me is pretty great. Another stab at the soul stylings that we find on side A. Nowhere Man is brilliant. We all know that, so I'm not going to spend more time here than I have to. Think for Yourself is fantastic. And then the Soul Experiment really quite works well on The Word. Swell tune. Michelle is kind of just fine, you know, very sappy, kind of the side of Paul McCartney that goes a bit too far for me. What Goes On, now we're on side B. I like a lot. Really good track. Kind of this outright country tune with, it's kind of the goofy Ringo song of the album, although yeah, it's a lot of fun. Really good. That twangy guitar solo in the middle there, I presume performed by Harrison, very strong. Girl is really brilliant. I like that track a lot. It's one of my more favoured tracks on this album. I'm Looking For You is one of the best songs on this album. Phenomenal. In My Life is top 10 or 5 Beatles. Therefore, it's one of the finest tracks in recorded music. You can't go wrong with In My Life. It slays me. Wait is pretty great. And then If I Needed Someone is amazing. A truly stellar track. Run For Your Life. This is an outright country tune as well. I really like Do Not Love, though. It's a very catchy song. The guitar, the chords are, it's very exciting. It's little twangs and all that. It's very, gets you into it, good tempo. But then the lyrics sung in that happy Beatles-esque fashion, it's kind of creepy. If there are 3 so-so tracks on this album, it's Drive My Car, Michelle, and Run For Your Life. Those are the closest things to so-so tracks. I don't think they're bad tracks, really, by any means. They're all fine in their own way. But Run For Your Life, sans the lyrics, is actually a very good song. It's just that every other track is a total winner. A complete 2 thumbs up. Phenomenal. So I find those other 3 tracks a little bit jarring by comparison. I really have to say that. And so there you have one of the most consistent and best Beatles track lists on any of their albums. Excellent stuff. And here I'd like to state this. You will have to forgive me if you desired to hear a breakdown of the music in these reviews slash dissections. I don't know if you want to call them that, it's kind of pretentious. If you wanted to hear a breakdown of these compositionally, that's not what you're going to find. By comparison to my pieces on the films, I'm not a composer. I don't really know my music theory very well. I can't break these down compositionally in the same way that I break down a film. I try to look at a film in terms of how it's put together as a filmmaker. That's not really what's happening when I look at these music. I'm coming at this not as a composer but as a listener. And I suppose that's why I insisted upon my interest and the potential prevalence of discussing an album as kind of a piece of recorded music as a cultural statement, as something in the communicative ether. So other than the aforementioned songs, which I thought were a touch weaker than most of the track list, do I consider there to be many or any flaws, issues, or potential criticisms to be made for Rubber Soul? There's only one fundamental problem hanging over Rubber Soul for me. The Beatles are so overexposed, it's just overbearing at this point. There's a certain degree to which one has to not be annoyed at the Beatles sort of tone of these albums, which especially the Beatles embracing their celebrity and their kind of media characters gets really annoying for me, especially by Abbey Road, even though I think that's a really strong album. And there's touches of it on all of their albums, and it just annoys me to a point. I can't deny that. And there's a part of me that whenever I'm listening to the Beatles, I feel I really ought not to be listening to the Beatles. Everyone listens to the Beatles at the expense of so much recorded music that's available for free on the internet. This unimaginable privilege that didn't exist prior to, 2010 even. And yet here I am listening to Rubber Soul. Well, hopefully after publishing this video and putting it out there in the communicative ether, I'll never have to listen to Rubber Soul again. Wouldn't that be nice? The prospect of being forbidden or prevented, it being impossible for me to listen to Rubber Soul ever again, is absolute torture. Although my choice to potentially not listen to Rubber Soul for another 4 to 5 years feels a very comfortable one, I must say. Or possibly any Beatles album for that matter. Except for maybe Revolver, just because it is Revolver, you know.